Well, you know, I've been debating with myself. When you're a kid, it seems like it takes Christmas forever to get here. But it still feels really long as a grown-up. And partly because the kids are like, where's the Christmas yet? We were just glad to get out of school, right? I can get an amen from Abby, I know that. We just getting out of school, that's a great start to the celebration. But then there's so much to do and so little time. It's easy to get really rushed. But the waiting is hard, but it's part of the celebration. It's part of the season. I know it feels a little anxiety-provoking, in our normal lives, but when you think about the waiting of generation after generation, long after the prophets had said, this Messiah is coming. He's going to be God with us. He's going to break every chain and all this kind of stuff. And so they were like, oh, any minute now, and so generation after generation, the kids were like, is the Messiah here yet? And they kept wondering, and then they're under the thumb of the Romans and thinking, surely any time now our Savior is going to come, we're going to be free again. And so that the waiting is really a part of the story and a part of the experience. And thinking back, just what were they waiting for? And it occurred to me that, we looked at the different characters and they were waiting for different things and maybe for different reasons, but some caught on and some didn't, right? Some people were so focused on what they decided they needed, political independence or freedom or victory or the death of their enemies. They so focused on waiting for that leader that they decided was the right one that they weren't able to process what was going on in terms of Jesus' birth and his ministry. And they missed so much. So many people who had been waiting for the Messiah for so long because they were maybe looking for the wrong thing, waiting with the wrong attitude. I'm not sure where they went wrong, but somehow they missed the whole thing. They missed Christmas because they had decided in their hearts that something else was what God should do. But there were people, some good examples of people who got it. Some were very learned and some probably had no education at all. Some were insiders, some were outsiders, some knew God and some didn't know God. There were those who immediately knew what was going on, recognized the divinity of Christ, recognized the whole plan and context right off. Others needed a little help. But they could see, these are people that could see God's hand in the world, recognized that the Savior was born and that God was now with us. And I just wanted to kind of go back through. We've talked about many of these characters over the last few weeks. But, I still marvel at the Magi, these wise people who were not a part of Israel, who maybe had heard of the prophecies. I mean, at most had heard rumors from Jewish people that traveled or something. But it seems just a vanishingly small possibility that they knew God and had read all of the scriptures. Really complete outsiders, and yet they saw this star and they knew right away something big was going on and they had to check it out. How was it that all of the faithful that waited so many generations were just like, star over Bethlehem, night, night. I mean, really, how did that happen? How did they miss that when these outsiders who may have been religious or maybe not, if they were religious, it wasn't Christianity. It couldn't have been. It wasn't Judaism. I'm just saying. They got it. They knew a king was born. And these learned, wealthy, probably powerful and respected people see a baby in humble circumstances, not at the palace, and throw themselves at his feet. They got it. They completely got it. They knew as soon as they saw, and yes, maybe a star leading them, that might have helped, yes, but they knew that was the child they had been looking for. Right away. And it's easy to overlook in the midst of the characters Zechariah and Elizabeth. These were people who were as faithful as a person could be, serving God, loving God, studying the scriptures, devout by any measure. But yet, because, remember their cultural ideas of God's favor, still kind of wondering in the back of their minds, gosh, we don't have a child. Maybe we're doing something wrong. Are we displeasing God in some way? How do we know? But yet, a lot of times, and this is the human reaction when we feel like, goodness, this isn't working the way it's supposed to. I'm supposed to do this and God's supposed to do that. It's very easy for us to just be like, well, forget it. You know, if you put a quarter in a candy machine and don't get candy, you're going to leave that machine and not use it anymore after you hit it a few times. And people often treat God that way, where they're just like, well, if I'm not getting the payoff I expect, then I'm not putting forth all the effort. It happens all the time. But these were people that withstood probably a great deal of social pressure. I mean, he's a priest, for goodness sake. And here they are, childless, and clearly had some hidden sin. Everybody, we know how that culture was. Everybody assumed the worst. But they stuck with it. They continued to wait for the Savior that was to come, and had the amazing opportunity to raise John the Baptist. Talk about recognizing Jesus on the spot. Do you remember what happened when Elizabeth, with a baby in her belly, saw Mary, who had just literally conceived, so it wasn't even a baby bump yet, and John jumped just at the voice of Mary. That's spiritual sensitivity right there. Amazing. Just what he had been waiting for, just what they had been waiting for. They just needed to know, Zechariah and Elizabeth, they needed to know that they weren't wasting their time, that God did hear them and did recognize their efforts to stay close to him. They just needed to know, and they got that in spades. And we talked a few weeks ago about the shepherds. You know, they probably, if you had walked by and said, hey, what are you waiting for? They probably would have said something to happen, so anything to happen, something. Probably a very boring life. Probably just wanting to have a chance to go in and hang out with everybody, have a party with people, go to worship for once without people throwing them out and telling them to go take a bath. They're wondering if they're accepted. They're wondering if God even knows they're out there. And there's the angels telling them about this child. And though they didn't know it, he was just what they'd been waiting for. Exactly what they needed, a sign that God remembered, that God's love was for them. There's also some brief mentions of a couple of people. One's named Simeon and another named Anna. People who worked day and night at the temple. Day and night. I mean, we're at church a lot. These were people who never really went home. They were so dedicated to their service. And they, just like probably every other person who of that level of dedication, had been praying their entire lives for the coming of the Messiah. And these were people, again, surrounded by folks who looked equally devout, people who spent just as much time worshiping at the temple, did just as many sacrifices, but somehow Mary and Joseph and that little baby walked by all those others, and these were two out of who knows how many. The second Simeon sees this kid, he's like, okay, God, I asked you to let me live long enough to see the king. I'm good now. He knew the second he saw Jesus. Spiritual sensitivity. That was all he was waiting for. You've known people, most or all of you have known people who were very ill and somehow held on until somebody came to the bedside or until the whole family was together, right? I've heard this story over and over and over. Somehow people just, they know. And this guy, he was just like, all I have to hold on to, I just want to meet the Messiah. And Anna was the same way. This was a woman who had lost her husband and just threw herself in to the service of God. And the Messiah was just what she was waiting for. She just wanted to see that baby. Then I think about Mary and Joseph. I don't know, just like the shepherds, if you had seen them a few weeks before everything happened and interviewed them, Joseph, what are you waiting for? What are you anticipating? I'm not sure. He probably would have said, I'm going to get married soon. I'm wondering if mom and dad will pick me out a good one. Maybe Mary would have said the same thing. I don't think they had any idea what was coming. I don't think there was necessarily this sense of anticipation, though they might have been praying for the coming of the Messiah like any other Jewish person. And yet, they found just what they were waiting for. See, that's one of the amazing parts of the story, was that even if you don't know who Jesus is, even if you don't know what God does with and to and through people, even if you don't understand how he changes your life and how he changes everything, people who've never heard of God, just like the Magi, Jesus is still what they're waiting for. He's still, no matter what they think they need, Jesus is the one. Jesus is the answer. And of course, as a young collegian, I'd be like, I can come up with lots of questions that Jesus isn't the answer for. Like, what is x plus y squared? But the things that matter, right? The things that a human really needs, sense of belonging. I mean, think of the things that Christmas means to so many of us, that the togetherness, the happiness and warmth and overflowing joy and wanting to share with each other and the celebration. All of those positive things flow out of the fact that Jesus is what gives us exactly what we need. So there are people who might say, I'm not interested in church. Jesus who, I've heard about him, but it doesn't matter how they conceive of it in their brain. Jesus is still what they're waiting for, because they don't have the things that Jesus can give them. The things that make our celebration of Christmas so amazing are the things they're missing. So I just want to make sure that not just today, not even just this Christmas, but that always we're remembering that we found what we were waiting for. That sense of belonging and acceptance, knowing that the one who created everything loves us. That's what we needed, and that has freed us to be ourselves, to be who we really are, to really be able to enjoy each other in true and deep ways. There's a lot of people that's what they're waiting for, and they don't even know it. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that they find out that Jesus is what they've been waiting for. Will anybody feel ripped off if I just stop now? Okay. I can keep going. Just like, that's a good stopping place. We don't have to go till 12. That's not in the bylaws, is it? Yeah, see, Betty Lee's like, I thought I had 10 more minutes. Get to the organ before he changes his mind. A Christmas gift for all of you. 8 minutes back into your life. All right. We're going to close with our hymn of commitment, All on the Altar. Let's stand and sing together. I hope everybody is going to have a fantastic, fantastic, love and family-filled Christmas time. Just make sure people know it's Jesus we're waiting for. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.